USF football kind of sucks.
With 148 wins and 141 losses to their name, over the course of their 27-year existence, University of South Florida has been pretty irrelevant for the vast majority of it. Sure, college football is a ruthless landscape anyways, where the big schools dominate year after year. It didn't help that they came in rather late, as USF had been open for over 40 years before the team was founded in 1997, which pales in comparison to the decades on decades of history of other Florida college teams. The campus had no football facilities, so their first team meeting was held under a tree. They had no stadium, so they played in Tampa Stadium, and later Raymond James, where they still play to this day. But Jim Leavitt had a dream to take this scrappy bunch of guys and somehow make them competitive. And in their first years of existence, the team actually played pretty well, as in their first 4 years as a Division I FCS independent, they had a winning record for 3 of them, and they even beat up on some FBS teams, including James Madison, Western Kentucky, and Troy State. In 2001, they moved up to that same league, Division I FBS, and in 2005, they were invited to join the Big East Conference, now known as the American Athletic Conference. Their first year there saw mild results, with an underwhelming 6-6 campaign, but in 2006, they rebounded to 8-4, including an upset against ranked West Virginia. There they were invited to their first bowl game, as they defeated East Carolina in the PapaJohns.com Bowl. Such a stupid name. They were riding high, but no one could have expected what would come next. Heading into 2007, the Bulls looked to continue on their momentum from the previous year, with their star quarterback Matt Grothe heading into his sophomore season after a crazy freshman campaign. In 2006, he finished third in the conference in passing yards, as well as touchdowns, though he also led the conference in interceptions, which was a little worrying. Nonetheless, it was still enough to earn him the Big East Rookie of the Year, and he looked to continue to build in 2007. Along with D-back Nate Allen and defensive end George Selvey, the team was projected to be solid, though not among the best of the best, as they had to deal with Louisville, Cincinnati, Rutgers, Connecticut, and the ever-dangerous West Virginia. They'd probably be good enough to go to another bowl, but probably not much more than that, right? Well, the season would begin on September 1st against the Elon Phoenix, who, being a division below them, meant that the game held less significance compared to others. It was clear USF wanted to keep themselves prepared for next week, but they were still able to perform well here, as Grothe would go 23 for 29 with 2 touchdowns. Mike Ford would lead the way on the ground with 83 yards and 2 scores of his own, as the Bulls would jump out with a big third quarter and not look back.
Over one defender, and now it is a foot race at the 10, inside the 5, and they're saying he's out of bounds.
Of course, that game was simply the warm-up, as the plucky Bulls were quickly matched with a huge game. Playing Auburn on the road is always a daunting task, but the team knew it had to show out. Hell, even the band made the trip, which to this point almost never happened, and the fans that did make the drive were going absolutely bonkers in the stands. But alas, as is the nature of games like this, the Bulls were never taken seriously, as they were greeted by the Auburn faithful with surprising humility.
This is the paper here in Auburn. Big East, USF predicted to upset the Tigers. Are you kidding me?
But as the Bulls took the ball first, Ford and Ben Williams would continue the rushing brigade with the big runs, which led to Grothy running it himself for the score. After an Auburn field goal, the Bulls would come out big with another huge run by Grothy, and another handoff to Ford made the score 14-3 late in the first. However, the Tigers would respond with a quick drive down the field for a touchdown of their own, as the offenses would stagnate a bit in the second quarter. With Auburn threatening once again, A.J. Love would come up big with a pick at the goal line, but they wouldn't be able to capitalize, and by the end of the half, the Tigers would take a 17-14 lead, thanks to a big punt return leading to a short field. However, the Bulls' defense would come out huge in the second half, forcing not one, not two, but 3 fumbles in the third quarter. This should have allowed the offense to put it away, but kicker Delbert Alvarado would prove to be snake-bitten, as after those 3 turnovers, the team would go down the field and line up for field goal tries, only to miss all 3 of them. Finally, in the fourth, Alvarado was able to connect on his 4th try to tie the game. But not long after, he would miss another field goal, this time from only 21 yards? Come on. With the Tigers getting the ball back at around 6 minutes left, they would take their time marching down the field, where Wes Byram would nail a 46-yarder to give them a 3-point lead with 3 minutes left. However, on the ensuing return,
Jerome Murphy all the way to the 34-yard line.
Jerome Murphy, who had already been playing a good game, came up huge with a 59-yard return to set up another short field for the Bulls. But once again, the offense couldn't cash in, as they would fall flat with 1st and goal. And so, facing 4th and goal from the 2-yard line with 55 seconds left, Levitt would be faced with a tough call. Do you go for the win and risk everything? Or do you send out your kicker, who's 1-5 on the night, kicking from a bad angle, and has a crowd of 87,000 people bearing down on him? Well, let's just say Levitt likes to live on the edge.
Severino to put it down. Alvarado's got it. Tie ball game.
And so, as the defense was able to hold down the Tigers, they would let the clock wind down, and much to the chagrin of the fans, overtime was necessitated. With these rules, both teams get a shot from the 25, and as Auburn got the ball first, with the energy of the crowd behind them, they were blindsided by the Bulls' defense coming up absolutely huge, forcing a 3-and-out. Byram was still able to kick a field goal to make it 23-20, and now the Bulls had one last chance to tie it, or win it all. After a couple small gains, Ford would be unable to reach the marker on 3rd down, so the team faced a 4th and 1. Levitt, being the ballsy motherfucker that he is, decided to go for it, and it would pay off as Grothy would get the sneak for the 1st down. And just a couple plays later,
He's got a touchdown, South Florida, and the Bulls upset Auburn. Jesse Hester with a touchdown reception from Matt Grothy.
USF beat Auburn. Yes, you heard that correctly. They went on the road against one of the best teams in the nation, and they won. Matt Grothy, you are a goddamn legend. And oh, did I mention that it was his birthday that day? What a hell of a present that was. It was this moment when the country saw that this USF team was in fact kinda legitimate, and they were worth taking seriously. And it was reflected in the AP polls, as for the first time in school history, they were ranked at number 23. Am I dreaming? Are the Bulls actually one of the best teams in the nation? They would prove it in their next game against UNC, where the Bulls would absolutely dominate on home turf, as Grothy would throw another 230 yards, Williams would rush for 64, and the defense would force 3 turnovers once again, as they held the Tar Heels out of the end zone up until the final minute, where it was basically garbage time anyway. All of a sudden, the Bulls were 3-0, and they were taking the nation by storm. They jumped up to number 18, as the hype was beginning to build for a team that might actually have a shot of making some serious noise. Perhaps so, but they would face another big test the following week, as they would play their old friends in West Virginia. Now, USF had already beaten them last year, but this was different. The Mountaineers are the number 5 team in the nation, the first time USF has been in a ranked versus ranked matchup. The precedent to win was there, but the question remained if this young team was able to rise up to the pressure. They had their fans to back them up, as 67,000 people would pack into Raymond James for the first sellout in school history. It was like the Auburn game times 10. They even had to deal with some nonsense from the other team, as West Virginia coach Rich Rodriguez said, "You're highly ranked, and when you go to play a game somewhere, people are going to sell out the stadium. It's like the Yankees. Every time they go somewhere, they get a big crowd. Every time we go somewhere, we're selling out stadiums or helping them sell out." Now, yeah, I know all about the time-honored Tampa tradition of having visiting fans flood in due to all the snowbirds. But this was different. This was a school that had never had a moment like this before, and they were damn sure they were going to make the most out of it. Even Lovett was pumped, as he was running full field sprints before the game to hype the team up. It was, and probably still is, the biggest game USF has ever played. After a rather sloppy first half that included 4 fumbles and a missed field goal, Ben Moffitt would light the crowd up with a pick 6.
White, he turns it over. Intercepted, and it'll be a touchdown. Ben Moffitt.
Then in the second, Grothy would somehow escape the pressure and throw a deep ball to Carlton Mitchell, which he would haul in for the score.
It is caught. Carlton Mitchell, touchdown.
Let me tell you, people in the stands were going absolutely apeshit. That pick 6 was probably the loudest the stadium has ever been for a USF game. Another big run by Jamar Taylor would cap off a long drive in the third that would give the Bulls a 21-3 lead. But once again, while the defense was able to get turnovers, the offense couldn't capitalize, as West Virginia would score again to make it a 1-score game in the fourth. However, with time winding down, the defense would prove to be lights out, shutting down the Mountaineers as the seconds ticked away.
Last time they have to snap it. Grothy takes a knee. The biggest game in South Florida history ends with the biggest win in the history of this 11-year-old Bulls football program.
This night was everything for this school. They had the energy of the crowd behind them. They had people throwing around flamingos. They had Grothy rocking a goddamn mohawk. And when they won, they had people storming the field. College football had taken over Tampa Bay, and people were eating it up. With the Gators losing, the Bulls jumped all the way up to number 6 in the nation. An unprecedented mark for a team who has only been around for 10 years. They were up there among the titans of the sport. There's no way this can last, right? Well, the Bulls would have to keep it going the next week against Florida Atlantic, where the pressure was seriously beginning to mount. Everyone knew that this was a big trap game for the Bulls, after coming off the highs of beating West Virginia. They knew that with each passing week, the stakes grew higher and higher, as even just one loss would send it all crashing down. If they had any hope of solidifying themselves as a true contender, they simply needed to keep winning. However, FAU came out to play, even with their stadium flooded with Bulls fans. They would keep the game close, as it remained tied heading into halftime. Ben Williams would once again rise up with a touchdown in the third, and Grothy would run it in for a score of his own. But the Owls would keep pace, as it remained a one-score game in the fourth. Come on, man, you can't lose now, especially to a Sunbelt team. That would basically kill any chances of being ranked ever again. They were letting FAU stay in it, as they would turn the ball over 4 times. However, they would get some luck of their own, as FAU kicker Warley Leroy would miss 3 field goals. It was a really sloppy game, but the Bulls were somehow clinging on to the lead, and they would get some help as Williams would show once again why he's a force to be reckoned with.
Touchdown, South Florida! A spectacular 54-yard run by Benjamin Williams!
He would finish the day with 4 touchdowns, being one of only 2 players in Bulls history to reach that mark, being joined only by Marlon Mack in 2014. However, the Owls would still hang on, and with 3 minutes left, they had a real chance to claim the upset, as they were only down 5. But the Bulls defense would finally shut the door, forcing a 4 and out. And with a short field, the Bulls would pull away, as the USF faithful would breathe a sigh of relief, as they improved to 5-0. All of that bullshit just to only go up 1 spot, as Wisconsin lost that same week, falling all the way down to number 19, which goes to show just how bad one loss can truly be. But the Bulls were still undefeated, and the dream was still alive. It was just in time for the team to head back home and face their dear old friends from Orlando. The war on I-4 nowadays is a complete crapshoot, with UCF absolutely dominating, winning their last 6 matchups. And now, with the Knights moving into the Big 12, the rivalry is pretty much dead, as now the teams will barely ever face each other. But back in 2007, it was a different story, as the Bulls were very eager to beat up on their hated rival. Of course, UCF was up and ready to stir some nonsense before the game, as fans online were being obnoxious, the team was being obnoxious, hell, even David Whiteley, writer for the Orlando Sentinel, was being an absolute tool. Like, come on, man. As if the Bulls needed any more motivation to run their rivals into the ground.
I know on Facebook they have this stupid, ridiculous thing called poke the opposing team's quarterback. And I've probably been poked 3 or 4 times by other schools all year, and I've probably been poked about 6 million times this week already by UCF fans.
The result? Well, it was a bloodbath. The Bulls wanted the Knights dead, and they left it all on the field. Grothy threw for 212 yards and 4 touchdowns before he left the game in the third, not because he was injured, but because by then, the rout was clearly evident. The defense was monstrous, limiting the Knights to just 145 yards all day. Kevin Smith, who would go on to rush for over 2,500 yards this year, was held to just 55. By the end of the third, it was already 43-10, and add on a couple more scores, and the Knights were getting thoroughly pounded 57-12 with about 3 minutes left. Surely at this point it would be time to wrap it up and take a knee to get it over with. I mean, the Bulls had their second stringers out. Grant Gregory, the backup quarterback, already got to have 2 touchdowns to his name. And now they were on their third string guy, Anthony Severino. He had barely made any plays beforehand, but today he would record his first and only completion as they went for it on 4th and 14 to cap off the humiliation. And hell, it was almost even worse, as after the Knights would punt again, Amari Jackson would field the return, and he would take it all the way back. Unfortunately, he would step out of bounds beforehand, nullifying the score. But oh well, that only took it down from a horrifying 71-12 to a slightly less horrifying 64-12. It's by far the biggest margin of victory between the two teams of all the times they've played, and it showed that the Bulls were no fluke, they were no joke, and they were here to stay. That night, they watched as LSU and California would both lose, and soon after, the Bulls were released. The University of South Florida Bulls are number 2 in the country. Only Ohio State stands ahead of them at number 1. If they're somehow able to keep this up, they'll be heading to the BCS National Championship. The Bulls can be playing for the National Championship. The fucking USF Bulls could be BCS champions. Unprecedented, unbelievable, unheard of, unsustainable. There is no way the Bulls can keep it up. There's no way they can finish the year undefeated. Sure, this team is really good, but not this good. They have to crack eventually. Well, it was time to head to Rutgers and face their destiny. They started out well enough, with Grothy continuing to play well as he would run in another score. But the Scarlet Knights would respond with a score of their own to tie the game at 10. Then, when USF lined up to punt in the second, Tim Brown would fumble it and give the ball right back to the Bulls, who would cash in to go up 17-10. When Rutgers got the ball back, they stalled out on the drive down the field, and as they lined up for a field goal,
it's blocked, scooped up, fumbled ahead, and now another fumble. It's Trey Williams scooping up the ball, and Williams heading for the end zone.
All of a sudden, it's 24-10, and the Bulls were once again looking to put this one away. or so we thought.
Marking of the ball is very tricky.
Video overturns the call on the field. There's an illegal forward pass from the 39-yard line. The ball by rule is dead when it hits the ground.
Illegal forward propulsion. The game had changed. The Bulls wouldn't go anywhere with the short field, and they would enter the half up 17-13. Then, early in the third, the defense would unravel as Underwood would get open for a 69-yard touchdown.
Tyquan Underwood to the house, 69 yards.
Grothy, who had only been sacked 8 times this whole season, got taken down 7 times tonight, and Rutgers was able to use the trick play to their advantage, as they would fool the Bulls with a fake field goal to go up 27-17.
For a touchdown!
It was quickly turning into an ugly game, but USF was still able to keep it close, as Grothy would go down the field and make it a 3-point game in the fourth. They had another chance when the defense would force a fumble at the Rutgers 40, but the offense would be shut down once again. And so it comes to this. One last drive from the 49 with only a minute left. And here the offense finally relented, as they couldn't keep up with the incredible pressure any longer. A sack and 2 incompletions left the Bulls with a 4th and 22, but they had one last gasp in them as Amari Jackson would haul in this crazy catch to get a first down. Until...
Pass interference. Number 18 offense. Pushing off the defense.
With 4th and 37, it was up to a Hail Mary to save the Bulls' hopes of competing for a national title. But fate had had enough of this team, and they were smited down.
Picked off.
The dream was over, as the Bulls would fall all the way to number 11. I mean, hey, going to the BCS championship was always going to be a pipe dream for this team anyway. But if USF can at least finish the season ranked, it would be a massive win for this club going forward. Despite the rough loss, they had to rebound the next week against Connecticut. They had to bounce back, right? Well, after everything this team has been through, this was the point where the dam broke. With the highs and lows of this crazy season, the injuries were beginning to catch up to them, and the pressure of expectations of being a ranked team. Maybe it finally got to them. The fun can only last for so long, and for the USF Bulls, the party was over. They were lifeless in the first half, as Grothy would be shut down, and Amari Jackson would have to leave the game due to injury. On the flip side, the Huskies would run all over the Bulls' defense, as they put up 16 unanswered points in the first half. The rain didn't help, as it made the field condition even worse, as Grothy would mishandle the ball in the red zone, and Alvarado would miss the field goal. In the third, USF was finally able to get on the board with a safety, and then a quick touchdown got them close. But Connecticut continued the pressure, with the teams exchanging field goals heading into the fourth. They had their chances. Grothy would get the team down to the 3-yard line only to be intercepted. And then later on, Cedric Hill would be wide open for the score, only to drop the ball. And thus, down by 7 with mere minutes left, the Bulls once again marched down the field, getting all the way to the 1-yard line. Then, on second down, they handed off to Moise Plancher? If you're wondering who this is, he took 10 total snaps all season and only gained 17 yards. And they're giving the ball to him on the 1-yard line, down a touchdown in the dying seconds of a critical game? Predictably, he gets stuffed for no gain. On third down, the Huskies force Grothy back to the 12, and on fourth down, he has no one to throw to, so the ball sails incomplete. They had every opportunity to win, and they blew it. Reality had hit the Bulls like a truck as their slide continued, falling to number 20. If there was any hope of saving their downfall, it was crushed once and for all at home the next week against Cincinnati. Once again, the Bulls started great, with a pick six and a kickoff return touchdown. Once again, the defense let up, as Cincy would get a punt return touchdown and a pick six of their own, as they would pile on 31 points in the first quarter. Once again, the Bulls tried desperately to claw back, cutting it down to 38-27 in the third, and then in the fourth, Grouthy would connect with Jesse Hester to make it a one-score game. Once again, the defense would come up huge in the end and force a turnover on downs. And once again, the offense got the ball to lead a game-saving drive, where Grouthy would connect with two big passes to get the team in the red zone. Only for, once again, the team would come up just short, as both Carlton Mitchell and Jesse Hester would drop the ball in the end zone as time expired. With 3 losses in a row, it was over. It was all over. The Bulls' miracle run had come to an end, and now they were only left to wonder about what could have happened. They were dropped out of the top 25, and despite winning their last 3 games, they were only able to get back up to number 23. They didn't even win their conference, finishing 4th behind West Virginia, Connecticut, and Cincinnati. They at least got to play in the Sun Bowl against Oregon, where after a really sloppy first half that resulted in a ton of penalties, the Ducks exploded in the second, putting up 38 points en route to a 56-21 rout of the Bulls. USF had went from number 2 in the country to losing their bowl game. A moment like this remains unprecedented in college football. A team as inexperienced and young as USF taking the league by storm, and for just a few short days, could say that they were one of the best in the nation. The next year, they would once again have a good run, getting up to number 10 before, again, cratering in the second half. And just a couple years later, Jim Leavitt would be fired after he had struck a player across the face during a game. Shortly after, the Bulls were back in the basement. And ever since then, while they've had their moments, they've largely remained irrelevant in the larger college football landscape. Grouthy, who had a great season, would end up going undrafted in the NFL, and he would spend some time in the CFL and Arena Football League, including linking up with Amari Jackson. Nate Allen would at least find some success in the Eagles, and Selvey would bounce around. Eventually, he would become the only member of this team to be inducted into the USF Hall of Fame, along with Anthony Henry, Marquell Blackwell, and Tampa Bay Vipers legend Quinton Flowers. This team, who had gone through crazy ups and downs, came out the other side practically the same as it always was. This isn't the Gators, the Seminoles, or the Hurricanes. This is the USF Bulls. And at least they can tell themselves that for a few weeks in 2007, they were on top of the college football world. But of course, the big question remains. How will they do this year? Well, they won 7 games, including a big bowl shutout victory against Syracuse. So, one of 2 things will happen. Number 1, they'll win, like, I don't know, they'll go 7-5, and then they'll make another bowl game, and it'll be whatever. Or,
Number fucking 1, baby. This is the year. This is a fucking